I sat down with 3 friends over the last weekend and talked about the themes that are in my latest book, Light the World, How Your Brilliance Can Shift the Planet. And in the book, I talk about us being at a crossroads where we can choose more freedom or more force. And only a small number of people are really needed to turn the tide. But we need to actively stand for freedom if we want more freedom. And so one of my colleagues said, what is freedom? What does freedom look like? And I started ambling, on a little bit and rambling a little bit. But her question got me pondering over the next few days. What does freedom look like? And there's something I came up with that I'd like to share with you that I think is very important. And if you look at the root of freedom versus force and where it leads eventually, you see that anytime someone is forced or they feel forced in any way, there's usually resentment that is bred out of that. So if you come into my home and you force me to give you money, I'm going to resent that. If you force me to give you money that then you go and give to John Doe down the street, I'm probably going to resent John Doe down the street, especially if he hired you to come in and take that money from me. So there's resentment that builds. And if you look, just through historical instances of where force is used versus freedom, you'll see that force leads to resentment, which leads to anger and hate and war. And freedom leads to serving others and love and peace. So I'll give you a couple examples of each one. In the Garden of Eden, God started this world with freedom. He did not start it with force. He put Adam and Eve in the garden and he told them, you have 2 choices. You can either eat the tree and fall and die eventually, or you can not eat the tree and stay here in this paradisal state. Now, he could have just as easily put Adam and Eve straight into a fallen world, couldn't he? I mean, have you ever asked yourself, why didn't he do that? Because if you start a world with force, you're going to breed resentment. And if you notice, Adam and Eve, even though they ate the fruit and they fell and they were cast out of the garden, there was no resentment ever recorded between them and God. They didn't resent God because they made their own choice to do that. Had he put them in a fallen world, there might have been some resentment there and enmity between God and man right from the get-go. But there wasn't, because God did not plant the seed of force in the Garden of Eden. Another example of freedom is Jesus, come follow me. He never says, get out of your boat. He's not got a gun on him. Get out of the boat, come over here, follow me. It's just an invitation, come follow me. And the young man who, he asked, what can I do to obtain eternal life? He told him, keep the commandments. He said he'd done that since a child, and Jesus said, well, or the man asked, what more should I do? And Jesus said, sell what you have and come and follow me. He didn't guilt trip the man. The man had a lot of possessions. He didn't want to do that. He was sad. He went away. But Jesus didn't guilt trip him. He didn't use any kind of manipulation or force. Okay? Look on the other side. You have Abraham and Sarah and Hagar. That whole situation there. Hagar's a slave. Sarah is trying to fulfill the promise that she and Abraham will have seeds, so she's kind of activating this old law that said that if your servant had the child, then it's like it's yours. And so this child would be Sarah's and fulfill that promise. But she sort of ropes in Hagar, who's a slave, a servant. And so there's not a lot of freedom in this situation. And then when Hagar is resentful or kind of lording it over Sarah, they send her away. So they force her away and Ishmael away. And then you have all this resentment and hate and war that has been bred between the Hebrew nations and the Arab nations and the Muslims and all this that bred out of that situation. So anytime you have a seed of force, you have resentment. On the other hand, freedom leads to a group of people who serve one another, who lift one another. And even in the United States, as much as we've got our flaws, and as much as we have thrown away some of our liberties, we are built on a seed of freedom. And that seed of freedom has led to a community of people who, when there is a catastrophe, they do tend to pull together. We tend to pull together and help one another. And so, and there is that love and kind of a feeling of tolerance for other people overall. Now, individually, it could be different. Now, you look at also at the foundation of the United States, and you see that they left the seat of force. There was slavery left over, and they intended it for it to be phased out. The Founding Fathers wanted it phased out, but they didn't feel like they could do it at that moment. Well, that seed bred resentment, which led to war, and that's the only civil war that we have had in this country. Knock on wood, hopefully we won't have any more. But that was left there by that seed of force. So freedom looks like the opposite of that. Okay, freedom looks like peace and serving others of your own free will. It's not a forced servitude. It's a serving by choice. It's lifting, building, blessing other people, living from your own gifts and respecting and valuing other people's gifts. And there's no force. Anytime you come in and you try to make someone else be good, or someone else do the right thing, or someone else do what you want them to do, you're breeding resentment, which will eventually lead to war and chaos. So anytime, just think about that. Think about that when you look at the elections coming up. Think about it when you look at whether a law should be passed or not. Do you have the right to come into someone's home and force them to do what you're telling them to do? If you don't, as an individual, have the right to do it individually, then you cannot convey to government a right that you don't have as an individual. You do have the right to protect your home. You do have a right to protect your life. If it's threatened, you have a right to defend yourself. And so you can convey to government the right to protect you, and you can delegate those things. But you can't delegate something that you don't have the individual right to do. Nobody has the right to come into your home, take your money away, and give it to the neighbor down the street. They really don't. And so how do you convey that to government if you don't have that right individually? Government receives its powers from the consent of the governed, and those governed individuals cannot convey something that they don't have. Just something to think about. So anyway, I'd love to hear your thoughts on freedom versus force.